Um, Hi, I'm with MMA journalist James Lynch, and this is just going to be like a general discussion on the recent fights that have been announced and a quick preview of the card this Saturday. How have you been doing so far during like lockdown?
Doing well, best I can do. Things are a little bit looser here. I live out in Vancouver, Canada, so it's not as bad as some of the other parts of Canada. So it's been not bad, and just keeping busy. Just doing a lot of interviews and getting back to the grind. And things are good though, man. I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, I've seen quite a lot about your recent like interviews, and it's like really good content. So cause I'm a fan as well, so I've been watching like a lot of your streams as well before doing this. So it's a really thank you for giving me this opportunity.
No problem. Happy to be here and talk some fights. And thanks for watching my content. I appreciate that.
Yeah. How do you see this main event going between Munoz and Edgar, which is it's got a fight with title implications in my opinion. Like it's two top five guys or top six and top five. How do you see it going?
It's really interesting. We're going to get a lot of questions answered on Saturday as to how good Frankie Edgar is at this point in his career. I mean, we know he's a former lightweight champion. He had a couple title shots at featherweight, but he's always been undersized, right? So how is he going to adapt to the bantamweight division? It doesn't look like it's been too bad of a cut. Everything I'm sort of reading says that it's been pretty seamless. So it's not a case of like, a really old fighter cutting a lot of weight to get down to a weight class. In his case, it's a little bit easier. So I don't think the cut will be as much of a factor in the fight. And if Frankie Edgar is anywhere close to, what we've seen recently, this is Pedro Muñoz's fight to lose, in my opinion. But, Edgar's still very dangerous. I think one of the things that people look at is, especially when you're looking at fights, is sort of the last fight, right? Like he was knocked out by Korean Zombie, but this is a guy who's established himself as, I think, the number one contender in the featherweight division. So that's not a bad loss to have. And you look at the fight before that, he fought Max Holloway. Decisive loss, no doubt about that. But Holloway didn't finish him in that fight. So this idea that Edgar could potentially be knocked out early, I don't see that happening. I think this is going to be a very close fight. But if I have to pick someone, that's kind of, it's obviously tough to pick because we don't know how Edgar's going to look at 135. I have to go with Pedro Munoz just because of the body of work he's done at 135. Let's not forget, only guy to finish Rob Font in the bantamweight division. Knocked out Brian Caraway, knocked out Cody Garbrandt as well, right? So and the cool thing with Munoz is that, early in his career, he was sort of known as a submission guy. Now he's really, polished up that stand-up as well. So, Frankie's chin is going to be tested in this fight for sure. And I certainly think he can knock out Frankie Edgar. But I think you're going to see a pretty close fight with Munoz either getting like a late finish or potentially winning a decision. I wouldn't rule that out either. And I know Edgar would, if you look at it on paper, would sort of have an advantage there just because he's been in title fights, a number of title fights. Munoz has never been in a title fight. So you might think the advantage is there. But I think with a guy who's used to cutting to bantamweight, who's fought in the division more, I actually think that'll favor Munoz a little bit. So we'll see. Like I said, we're going to get a lot of answers on the weekend. No pun intended. I know that's Frankie's nickname. But I think Munoz will edge this one out. But if Edgar goes out there and wins, it wouldn't surprise me either, just because, like I said, I don't think he's at that point yet where we need to start talking about, retirement or anything like that. I think, this is going to tell us a lot in this fight.
Yeah, it's a huge fight in a division that's gained a lot of interest, especially since lockdown. Really, like you've got Moraes and Sandhagen's got the spotlight. You've had Garbrandt and Sanso on the main card recently, and I think Munoz has also got good wins over Brett Johns as well over here. He was very highly rated.
That's right. I think Johns only had one loss at the time too when he fought him, or might have even been undefeated. No, I think that was the second loss he got. But yeah, you're right. I shouldn't overlook that one either.
Yeah, and I think I'm just a bit worried about Edgar because he did used to be a lightweight champion, which is just mad. But I don't like the fact he got knocked out so quickly and against the Korean Zombie, and I know it wasn't even that long ago. Whether I'm pretty sure he would have been fully recovered by now, but whether he'll be a bit scared and be a bit timid, and he'll be too focused on not getting hit, or he might forget Pedro Munoz's ground game, and he could submit Edgar if Edgar's too worried about getting hit. And also we've got obviously Garbrandt fighting for the flyweight title. What do you think about that?
I don't like it. I don't think it sets a good precedent. Look, like if Garbrandt was the bantamweight champion and going down to fight like TJ Dillashaw was when he wanted to fight Cejudo, I don't have an issue with that because he's the champion. But we're talking about a guy who's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. He won his last fight, sure. Not going to take any away from that. That was a highlight reel win over Rafael Sunsao. But we just got this division moving with Cejudo out of the way, and now they want to bring in another guy to fight for the title who has 0 wins at 125. I don't like it. And this idea that people are saying, well, it's going to bring attention to the division. Well, why not let the division build itself? You know, the UFC's never given the flyweight division that much of a fair shake. I know Demetrius Johnson was given a lot of opportunities in main events, and it didn't go, his way just was never translating well to the fans. But what about the other fighters? I could name you a handful of flyweight fights that were buried on the prelims over the years. So I don't think the UFC's given them enough opportunity to actually promote the division well. And what I don't like about it is that you've got guys like Brandon Moreno and Alex Perez who are coming off big wins, and it's like, what was it all for, right? Like if you're not even going to get to fight for the title. So I don't like the move. I don't know. I don't think Cody will do well. I mean, he was knocked out at 35. And now you're cutting more weight. You're more susceptible to getting knocked out. You're taking out more water. And you're fighting a guy who just absolutely destroyed Joseph Benavidez not once, but twice. I know he missed weight the first time, but I don't think it's going to bode well for Cody. And I don't think it's worth the payoff either, because if Cody loses this, it'll be what? 4 losses in 6 fights or 5 fights or something. So my math's not very good, as you can tell. But in general, I don't see it boding well for him. And I don't think it's that much of a boost to gain interest in the flyweight division. I think it's one of those things where you got to let it just percolate. You got to let the division grow on its own and not be so concerned with adding in these new names here. So yeah, I don't like it, and I don't think he's going to win.
Yeah, I think UFC really do need to be careful in terms of keep on giving these guys who are just coming off 1 win or even 2 losses with Aldo when he fought Jan for the vacant title, because I think they need to keep making sure that people see it as legit. Like, you got Marino, who's looked amazing since returning to the UFC, and arguably Askarov, who's arguably could be a future contender after beating Pantoja. He looked great against Formiga. I feel like that would have been easier to sell in terms of you got this guy who's on a good streak against a guy who's just got with a knockout power. He stopped Joey B twice, who's number 1 contenders, compared to a guy who's lost 3 in his last 4 fights. And against Santo, he wasn't like he was amazing in that fight. He caught him with a great KO, but it wasn't like he was dominating it. So and he's going, like you said, he's going down division. That might not help his chin. He's took a lot of damage against Munoz and his previous 2 KOs as well. So I think Figueiredo, the reason why I like this fight is because Figueiredo gets a lot of spotlight in this. So, and the flyweight does, because it's the main event of a pay-per-view, which we haven't really done since Johnson. So it does give light to the division. And I think that if Figueiredo wins, that's the best possible outcome, because I think like if Garbrandt wins, he's just going to go back to
I'll try and do the double champ thing, right? Like, I mean, didn't we already do this with Cejudo? Like, it's I'm with you there. Totally agree. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just thought I mentioned that.
Yeah, but I still don't think Marino or Askarov or Perez will get a title shot, because I think Figueiredo, if he beats Garbrandt, he's thinking, well, I can handle these bantamweights. He might want to fight Jan for the title. So I think it's not the best position for a division. How would you see Figueiredo versus Jan if Figueiredo was to win?
Oh, I mean, I'd see. I don't know if he gets that shot, because that's not a big money fight for Jan. And you've got so many people at bantamweight right now, and you've got some key matchups. You've got Moraes and Sandhagen. You've got the division's just loaded right now. So Figueiredo moves up. I mean, that's going to set a really bad precedence for flyweight. But I think Figueiredo wins, and then I think he fights the winner of Moreno and Perez, I would think. Just because that's sort of like a number 1 contenders fight. Both of them won impressively in their last respective bouts. Actually, Moreno got a split over Formiga, and Perez actually finished him. So that's what's kind of interesting here is like, can Perez finish Moreno? Can Moreno beat Perez? We'll see. But I don't know. I don't see Figueiredo moving up unless it's like a weight cut thing. I don't see him moving up for like a money thing, because he just doesn't strike me as that type of guy. Now, answering your question though, how would he do against Petr Yan? I'd still favor Jan. I think he showed in that last fight against Aldo that he is the real deal. Some of the questions were being asked heading into that fight was, lack of competition. Like, he didn't look great against Jimmy Rivera. And yeah, he got the win over Faber, but Faber's really old. So it's like, how good is he? And I think he showed that in the last fight because Aldo had a good, even though he lost the fight before that against Moraes, he still went the distance with him. And a lot of fighters don't get that far with Marlon Moraes. They get knocked out. So I thought that was a really impressive win with Jan. And that's why they got to do Jan and Sterling next. That makes too much sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really shocked that, because Jan versus Moraes was for Kazakhstan, I'm really shocked they didn't do that for the vacant title. Like, I don't understand why they couldn't do, because it was in Abu Dhabi, so really, it wasn't like Moraes couldn't fly over. And Jan, it was in a neutral venue. And I just think that they had everything signed, so I don't know why they couldn't move it.
Well, I did this. This is my theory on that. I think so remember, Aldo was supposed to fight Cejudo, right? And then Aldo couldn't get over, so they put in Dominic Cruz. And I think it was one of those things where they're like, Aldo's team's probably like, hey, you gave us the title shot. Like, you can't take it away from us. So they sort of argued that, and that's why he ended up getting the shot against Jan as opposed to Marlon Moraes. But look, I'm with you. Like, I didn't think the Aldo fight made sense because, yeah, whether you thought he beat Moraes or not, on the record, it's coming off a loss, and we're continuing this trend of, giving title shots off losses. Now, it's different if you're the champion and you lost and it's like a rematch. I'm fine with that. But like a Yoel Romero getting to fight Adesanya after, he lost to Paulo Costa. I know Costa wasn't available, but like, come on, you got to do something there. Like, I think they should have looked at Jared Cannonier as the guy to fight Adesanya. I know he ended up getting injured, but that should have been the fight initially. So that's kind of my rant on title shots. I don't like the whole, if you lose a fight, you get a title shot, just because you have a big name. I've never been a fan of that.
Yeah, and I'm not really a fan of like a one fight win streak either, unless you beat like the number one contender, like
exactly.
But Calderwood, and that's justified because I know she wasn't the number one contender, but she was because she had this fight signed. So even though it's the most not intriguing fight, it's legitimized because she beat someone that was meant to fight for the title. Who do you think that Stipe will fight next? Because obviously he had a great win over DC. That chapter has finished now. Do you think Ngannou has to be the next challenger?
Yeah, I think it's a slam dunk. I know John Jones is lingering around there, but I've said this on my podcast. I talked about this at length. I don't think John Jones fights for a while. The UFC and John Jones are in this weird position where it's like, John has been with the company forever. He's been a champion for a long time. He wants to, get bigger, more notable paydays. And those fights are at heavyweight. They are like nothing against Dominic Reyes or Jan Blachowicz or, Thiago Santos or Glover Teixeira, but those names aren't as big as like a Ngannou or Derek Lewis. So I think Jones is looking at that and saying, look, I want to get paid more. But the UFC right now, it's like, hey, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, we're not going to do a super fight right now when we can't even get crowds in. So I think it's just a case of like bad timing. And with that said, I don't think I'm going to say it right now. I don't think Jones fights this year. And so that's why I think the Ngannou fight will happen next. Now, if they could figure out the money or whatever, and Jones is like, hey, like I'm ready to go, like the UFC and I are talking, then yeah, I would be a bit worried that he would leapfrog Ngannou and get the title shot against Stipe, because that fight was rumored. I think it was even rumored back like in 2018 before Jones got popped after the Cormier fight, the second Cormier fight. So they've been talking about this fight for a while, but no, you got to do the Ngannou rematch. He's done more than enough. 2 knockout wins over Curtis Blades now. Knocked out pretty much everybody in that division. They got to do the rematch just to see if Stipe can close that chapter as well. And I think that's what'll end up happening, but I don't think it'll happen this year. You just look at the pay-per-views that are coming up. I think they're going to go with Usman and Burns and Jan and Sterling on the December card. And then I think January, you would probably do Stipe and Ngannou, I would think, or February, whatever. But yeah, I think Stipe is not in a rush to get back.
Do you think that Amanda Nunes might come back on maybe the December card?
It's tough to say, right? Like her wife's pregnant, so maybe they want some time to do that. And like, that's kind of why I think they booked that Holly Holm and Aldana fight. I know that was supposed to happen earlier, but Aldana got COVID-19. If Aldana wins that fight, I think she's the next contender for Nunes. If Holly wins, that obviously delays things. And then 45, there's been like nothing going on. Like I talked to Felicia Spencer last week and she's like, I don't even know what's going on in the division. There's no fights booked. Like, what are they doing? So yeah, I don't think Nunes is in a rush to come back. And unless, like I said, unless Aldana, like I don't even know if Aldana will be home. Unless Aldana like goes out there and gets like a first round finish, I see it pretty unlikely that Nunes fights this year, but you never know.
Yeah, and it's hard because in the featherweight division, we've not even got rankings. So it's really hard.
Because there's like 4 fights. Like, honestly, I could name it on my hand. I think there's the girl that both Felicia Spencer and Megan Anderson beat. The girl. Yeah, and then who else? And then there's Felicia and Megan. So there's 3. I think Leah Letson, who was on Ultimate Fighter, is staying at featherweight. She's another one, but she's been out with injuries. And then it's like, who else? Like it's crazy. Like this division's been around since Cyborg won the title, and they've just done such a poor job of either bringing in fighters or whatever. Bellator has all the featherweights right now. So yeah, they're kind of, it seems like they just don't care about it, especially with Cyborg leaving. Like that was the one big fight you could have done, was that rematch. And then, they obviously had their falling out. So yeah, I don't think Nunes, and I don't know. I think featherweight could be a thing of the past soon. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
Do you think bringing someone like Kayla Harrison is a must for him? Because I know she's a lightweight, but she's got a lot of hype around her.
Well, that's the thing. I do wonder about this. I was talking to someone, actually, I mentioned this on my Q&A this morning. Like, what's PFL doing? Like, they're postponing the season, which understandable. It's COVID. I guess they rely very heavily on their live gates, I'm assuming. Otherwise, why not do events like everyone else is without crowds? But if your fighters aren't competing, let them go fight elsewhere. Let them make a paycheck. You saw Lance Palmer pretty upset, wants to get back in there. I think, he's trying to go to the UFC now because he's like, look, I won like $2 million. I'm good financially. Like, let's go, test myself and, make some more money. Because by the looks of it, these fighters aren't going to fight till next year. And the reason I bring all that up is because, like, if you're Kayla Harrison, why wouldn't you want to go? Now, but here's the interesting thing, though, right? Who does Kayla Harrison train with? Amanda Nunes. So it's like, it's tough, but you could, maybe you do Kayla, you bring her over, get her to fight Megan, do that fight. And then, because Spencer told me she's like not ready to come back till December, early next year, which, by the way, you can check out that interview on MMAnews.com. But yeah, I think that, I'd love to see Kayla Harrison in there because it looks to me like she's had a few challenges in PFL, but it looks to me like her freak athletic skill and just her strength is like, she's dismantling everyone. I know she's had one fight that went the distance, or a couple, I think, but let's test her out and see how she does against like a Megan Anderson or whoever, right? So I'd love to see her in there, but I don't know if it happens. PFL seems very stubborn about letting their fighters go.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of someone else who's testing going to the UFC, Michael Chandler, how do you think he would do in the UFC?
I think he'll do quite well. I don't think he'll ever win a title. I don't see him beating like the top 2-3 guys, because let's not forget, Chandler had some setbacks in Bellator, right? Lost to Alvarez, lost to Will Brooks, which is such a weird loss now, looking where Will Brooks' career has gone as of late. But no, I think that I think he will go to the UFC. I know he teased the fight yesterday with Dustin Poirier. Look, I'm with, because I saw people say, oh, give him like Islam Makhachev, or give him a top 5 guy. Throw him to the Wolves. That's what they did with Eddie Alvarez. Let's see how good Chandler is right now. And I think he will go to the UFC because what's left for him in Bellator? Yeah, he's got the Pitbull rematch. He could do, there's a few other contenders in there, but really, like, you're going to get better matchups in the UFC right now. I love Bellator, but that's just the truth. Mm-hmm. And let Pitbull dominate over there and let him do his thing. He's not leaving anytime soon. So yeah, let's get Chandler in there against a top 5 guy. Poirier's free. But I've always said with Poirier, why take a fight now? Wait to see what happens with Khabib and Gaethje, because in that off chance that Gaethje ends up getting that win, you've already got a win over him. So that's an automatic title shot in my eyes. So I would wait if I was him. I think you do Chandler and maybe Tony Ferguson, or Chandler and like Dan Hooker or something. Like, you know what I mean? Give him a top guy and let's see what he's made of. Let's see how good he really is, because that's always been the question. How good is Michael Chandler? Well, we're going to find out when you go to the UFC. So yeah, I would love to see him in the UFC. I think I'd love to see Pitbull in the UFC. I'd love to see Douglas Lima in the UFC. I'd love to see all these guys test and see how good they are. Because let's be honest, for the most part, they are fighting easier competition than what's in the UFC. So we'll see. And that's not a knock on Bellator. They've been doing a good job bringing in fighters and making competitive matchups. But I want to see these guys fight the best. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, Benson Henderson's a good win, but it's not the same Henderson that was in the UFC. He's declined a bit recently.
100%. Yeah.
Could you do Chandler versus Felder as well? If Hooker and all these people aren't ready yet, you could do. I think Chandler and Felder is quite a big enough name.
But the question there is that a fight Felder's willing to to take? Because he pretty much said he's retired unless like an interesting fight comes along. Is that Michael Chandler fight that intriguing fight to him? I don't know. It's tough to say, because Chandler obviously is a former Bellator champion, sort of been the face of Bellator for years. Is he a household name? I don't know. That's tough to say. So is that the type of fight that Felder wants? I'd hope so. I'd love to watch that fight. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I just wonder if Felder's game, then yeah, that would make a lot of sense. That's a good fight.
Yeah. Keeping with the lightweights, what do you think of Islam Makhachev versus RDA?
Perfect matchmaking. That's exactly how you build up, a guy in that division. Makhachev, the big knock on him has been not only not fighting that much, but two, he hasn't really fought notable guys, right? Like people say, this guy's going to be the next Khabib. He's going to win the title and all this. Well, prove it. And it's not necessarily his fault. It's he hasn't fought that much. He's got to fight who he's given. But this is the first like notable opponent in his career where RDA. He fought former lightweight champion, been in the UFC forever. So I love the fight. And for RDA, I mean, look, he's had some setbacks. He's obviously not a contender at welterweight. We discovered that, losing 4 or 5. Does have the win over Kevin Lee, but let's see how he does. Now I'm interested because I seem to remember RDA moving up because he cut too much weight. So what's changed? Has he figured things out, or is he just thinks that it's going to be a better run for him at 155? We'll see. But great fight for both guys, because for Islam, it's how good is he? We've been hearing for years you're going to be the next champ. Well, you got to go out there and beat a former champ in RDA. And conversely for RDA, are you still good? Are you still competing at a high level? Well, if you can't beat this up and comer, it's going to tell us a lot of things. So literally perfect matchmaking. Love the fight.
Yeah, I think the only issue of the fight I have with is that Makhachev is ranked now, and I think he's been ranked for a while, and he's not really fought ranked guys. Like his last fight was Davi Hamoch. I know RDA is a massive name, but I have a problem with him not fighting a ranked guy. He could have done like a Judoba or Diego Ferreira or one of those guys. I think that would have impressed a lot of people. I think and it would have given him a chance to go up the rankings. I'm not sure that RDA gives him that shot up the rankings yet.
But they can always throw the whole former champion thing. It's like how Pettis was bouncing back and forth between welterweight and lightweight, and people will always be like, well, he beat Pettis, right? It's like when Ferguson fought Pettis. It didn't really make sense at the time because Pettis had some losses, but the whole thing was he's a former champion. So I think that holds some weight. It's no different than Conor fighting Cowboy and Dana White being like, well, he could fight the winner of Khabib and at the time Ferguson, right? But like obviously like Cowboy's not like a big win like rankings wise, but he's Cowboy. Everyone knows who he is. So I think they're kind of going with the same mentality there where it's like, hey, he's fighting a former champion. Let's see what happens. So that's kind of my thinking on it as far as the matchmaking.
Yeah. Talking about big returns, Thomas Almeida's back against Alejandro Perez.
Is he? I missed that. Okay, cool. I didn't know that.
I think he's fighting on Mirage versus Sandhagen card in Abu Dhabi. I think it's been announced at some Fight Island. So he's obviously took a lot of time off. How do you think he'll do in that fight? Because Perez is a very good fighter as well.
Yeah, I see that. October 10th. So that's on the Fight Night card. Oh, yeah, you're right. Moraes and Sandhagen. Yeah, good call. I didn't even know that. So that's great. How will he do? I mean, he's only 29, right? He's had some setbacks. Obviously lost to Fawn and Rivera and Garbrandt. But, I mean, those are all top guys in the division. Perez is kind of, you know what? I'll use the word. People might not be a fan of it. I think he's kind of a gatekeeper. Like, if you can beat Perez decisively, usually you go on to good things. If you can't beat Perez, then you're kind of, not a sort of a contender in that division. So I think it's good matchmaking. Perez won't make the fight easy. He's not a guy that gets finished very easily. Although who beat him recently in the first round? Let me just check here. It was Song Yadong actually knocked him out. But in general, like Cody Stamann went the distance with them, had a win over Eddie Wineland and Matthew Lopez and stuff. So yeah, we'll see. I think I think it's well, maybe the time off was better. Maybe Almeida's been working on things, but do you remember this guy? I mean, it was him and Garbrandt were the big prospects, and Garbrandt knocked him out. And then after that, he just wasn't the same. So yeah, hopefully he can turn things around. Only 29, so hopefully we can see him get back in the winning track there.
Do you know what kept him out for so long? Was it injuries?
Yeah, I heard it was injuries. People forget he was supposed to fight Chito Vera last March, and then he had an eye injury. So those are pretty serious, right? So I think that's why he's really eased back into things. And now with COVID, probably backing things up even more. So we'll see what they decide to do as far as we'll see how healthy he is going into this fight. But I think it's going to be interesting to see if he can turn it around. We love stories like that, don't we? I mean, seeing a guy who's fallen in hard times, so to speak, with the losses, we like seeing a comeback story. So hopefully he can put it together.
Mm-hmm. What do you think will happen with Leon Edwards now? Because obviously you got Colby Covington versus Woodley. You've got Burns versus Usman, probably what they're going to make. Could you do Edwards versus Wonderboy? Would you think that could be a good?
That has to be the fight, right? Like, because I don't think Masvidal is going to fight Edwards. There's no incentive for Masvidal to take that fight. It's not a big money fight. I think Edwards probably beats him, if we're being honest here. I mean, Masvidal's great and his striking's good, but I think Edwards is a very well-rounded fighter, and he's gotten so much better since losing to Usman. I think Wonderboy and Edwards makes the most sense. And I know Leon doesn't want that fight. I spoke to him recently. He says, look, for me, it's Burns, Usman, or Masvidal. And like I said, I don't think Masvidal is going to fight him. Burns and Usman are going to fight each other. You got to stay active, man. Like it's been forever since Edwards got that last win. So I think it makes sense, and I think it's a fight that he could potentially win. But it makes the most sense by the rankings. They gotta stick with that and do that fight, I think.
Was his last win against Cerrone in Singapore? Was that his last?
No,
fight?
It was his last win was RDA.
Oh, okay, so.
But even so, that fight was what last was it last July? Let me look it up here so I sound like I actually know what I'm talking about here. Yeah, his last fight was against Dos Anjos in July. There you go. Good stuff.
Okay. So he's playing quite a dangerous game, isn't he? Like UFC don't like people that just sit and wait. Be like, guys,
to his credit though, let's not forget. So he was supposed to fight Woodley in March, right? And then with COVID, the card got canceled. And then they did you hear the whole story about how they tried to get him to fly to the US? And he's like, hold on a second here. Like, I'm leaving my family in the middle of a pandemic. Like, I'm not doing that. So yeah, which is kind of crappy by the UFC. And then the card didn't even end up happening anyways. But no, so it's been that. And then I know they tried to get him to fight Usman when Burns was out, I think he initially had the Usman fight, but then it's same thing, like he wasn't able to train or do anything like that. So yeah, that's why he didn't end up getting the fight. So yeah, I think the last I spoke to him, he was getting back to training finally. He was finally ready to go. So I think you'll hear about something here fairly soon.
Mm-hmm. I think the welterweight division's a lot like the featherweight division in terms of you got all these great contenders, but there's just a lot of uncertainty with what's going to happen. Like, obviously, welterweight I think has a clear number one contender, but in the featherweight you've got Yair Rodriguez, you've got Korean Zombie, you've got Ortega, and you've got Galvin Kattar and Holloway still. So, who do you think will be the number one? Who do you think is the rightful number one contender, or do you think they will need one more win?
Well, yeah, because Zabit's not going to get the shot, right? Because, like, I think they're going to really try and make that Yair fight finally happen whenever that ends up taking place. There's been some rumblings it's been rebooked, but I don't see anything's confirmed yet. It's got to be Zombie Ortega, and I think Zombie's going to win that fight. So I think Zombie's the guy. I mean, you could have almost given him the shot now, just with what he's done. Like, and I know Edgar's not like I know he's a former champ, but Edgar's not like a contender anymore, I don't think. So yeah, I think the winner of Zombie and Ortega will get it, unless they do this trilogy fight with Max. But honestly, like, I don't know how you feel, but like, I know that fight was close and a lot of people felt Max won, but like, let's move on here. Let's, if Holloway wants that third fight, give him something in between. I think they should do Holloway and Kattar next, and then you do the winner of whatchamacallit, Zombie and Ortega fights the winner, fights Volkanovski, and then Zabit can fight the winner of that or something, or Zabit and Yair winner can fight the winner of that. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. It's a good problem for the UFC to have, I think, with all these emerging contenders who are very marketable guys as well. I think that with the Volkanovski-Holloway fight, I think I've got quite strong opinions on that. Because even though Holloway knocked down Volkanovski in the first couple of rounds, after that he didn't really do anything much, did he? I thought Volkanovski was more active, and I think he did enough to win the fight. I know a lot of people don't think that, but I just don't think knocking someone down in the end of a round, which was quite close to be on it, or 10-8 rounds. I
got so much crap because I sometimes I do like these reaction videos after the fight ends. I thought Volkanovski won, and everyone's like, "How could you say that? It was a complete robbery." But like, look, here's the difference between a close fight and a robbery. A close fight is where a fighter won some of those rounds. Like, I don't care what you say. You could be the biggest Max Holloway fan ever. You're giving Volkanovski at least one of those rounds. You have to. Like, especially, I think was it the fifth? I can't remember which round it was where like clearly Volkanovski won. And then like, it's because people wanted Max to win. That's what it came down to. Like because he looked better than people thought. Like he definitely looked better than that first fight. Like clearly Volkanovski won the first fight. No debate there. Second fight, yeah, it was close, but not a robbery. Robbery is Diego Sanchez and Ross Pearson. Diego Sanchez didn't win a single round against Ross Pearson in my eyes, and they gave him the decision. That's a robbery. There's a big difference there.
Also, yeah, like Cadela versus Hill was a robbery, I think, as well.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
So obviously, if you got, I think Korea Zombie, if he beats Ortega versus and he fights Volkanovski, I think that's just such a good stylistic fight, and I think that it's more marketable than a third fight with Holloway. I know Donna said it's hard not to give it him, but that's because he thinks he wins, and like he did with Aldo, he put Aldo one, so he just skipped him all on the right, which I didn't agree with, but. We got Costa versus Adesanya in September. How do you think that fight is going to go?
actually broke this fight down last week on. I have a channel over on Rockfin, which is like a new platform, like similar to YouTube, and I do this thing called Early Look, where I kind of go in depth in the stats. And look, it's a close fight. I mean, Costa's undefeated for a reason. That win over Yoel Romero, especially, really impressive. But what it comes down for me is two things. Number one, Adesanya's got a bit of a reach advantage in the fight, and if he can utilize that, I don't think Costa's going to be able to get on the inside and tag Adesanya and potentially knock him out. And two, just way more experience. Like, let's forget about MMA because even Adesanya has an edge there. How about kickboxing? This guy's got a ton of kickboxing fights and fought really good competition over there. Like, that's something that Paulo Costa can't match. And if you look at, his wins, the best win for Paulo Costa in his career is Yoel Romero. That's the only one. Hendricks, I mean, maybe Uriah Hall, he's sort of a top 15 guy, but you look at he fought Hendricks and fought a couple other guys, not really that impressive. Whereas Adesanya, he fought Gaslam, he fought Brunson, who now is looking great. There's all these wins that he's had that are just more impressive. So to me, I would, I think Adesanya will slightly edge it out, but I see it being a pretty good fight and not the type of fight that we saw with Romero and Adesanya. I think it'll be exciting.
Yeah, and he's also got really good wins over Robert Whittaker as well.
Yeah,
and he destroyed him, and we saw how Whittaker looked against Till, and Till's improved a lot since the Masvidal fight, I think, in the middleweight division as well. So it's not Whittaker being done, and Whittaker's obviously got a lot. So I don't think he gets enough credit for that one, considering what Whittaker. I know he has a lot of injuries, but he was still the man in the division, and I just feel like not many people talk about that win as much as they should do.
Aren't fans so recency bias or whatever that's called, where it's they always base it off the last fight? People calling Adesanya boring. It's did you watch that Calvin Gastelum fight? Even Izzy joked about that. He's I had a fight of the year against Calvin Gastelum, and then I had one bad fight against Romero, and all of a sudden I'm boring. It's fans are so your last fight. It's like Curtis Blades. I've been arguing with people on my live stream this morning, people calling Curtis Blades boring. It's don't you remember he finished Overeem and Junior Dos Santos? Why are we fixated on this Volkov fight? It's crazy to me. So I just wanted to mention that because I think it's so funny how fans don't even it's they forget all the other fights. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's also people are constantly mentioning the Alex Pereira knockout of his Adesanya in kickboxing.
Yeah,
but it's it's a different sport. You're more focused on head
striking. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, in MMA, you've got your grappling. And I think he's able to use his movement more because he's got the cage to bounce off more. While in kickboxing, it's harder to do on ropes. And I think Adesanya will win the fight. I think Costa will be very emotional in the fight because he's got he fight because he's obviously eager to get to Adesanya because obviously there's been a lot of trash talk back and forth between them, and I think Adesanya said in a promo that he punches with precision, which couldn't be more true. And you got most of these kickboxers that do so well in MMA because they're so accurate with the strikes. You got Brad Riddle on the card as well, who beat Magomed Mustafayev next in his last fight. He's fighting Alex De Silva. How do you think that fight's going to go? And I think Riddle could be a future top 10 fighter because I think he's just a nightmare. I think his activity is really good. I think his accuracy is amazing. And I think what kickboxers have a lot of advantage over just general MMA fighters and Muay Thai fighters as well. These guys fight at a high level all their career. They're constantly world title fights where they're fighting the best up-and-comers. So I think that gives them a huge advantage over some guys who just do MMA.
Absolutely. Sorry, you just cut out there for a second. What fighter were you talking about? Sorry.
We had Riddle versus Alex De Silva.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah, no, Riddell's, I think he's the real deal. You just hear about how highly praised he is by guys like Israel Adesanya and Volkanovski, and just how much he's helped them and stuff. So yeah, I'm with you. I think the experience and just everything he brings to the table, he's going to be a problem for a lot of fighters in that division. And I think Alex De Silva is going to be the next victim.
Mm-hmm. I think Alex De Silva is very good as well. He's only 21. I think it's a bit harsh. He could be 1 and 2, and I think his matchmaking, they could have been a bit more, I wouldn't say easier matchmaking. They could have fought guys maybe in the top 40 rather than fighting guys in the top 25 already. Mm-hmm. He's been thrown to the wolves at such a young age, and I think this is a guy they could build up. But it's just they're doing this quite a lot now in terms of
Well, they've been doing they had I'm trying to think of a fight recently where that was the case. They had Well, the one I always bring up, just because it reminds me of it, is they had last year. They had Grant Dawson against Mike Trezano. Trezano won on the Ultimate Fighter, and Grant Dawson won a Contender Series, and they were both young guys, and they put them together. And obviously, Dawson won that, and has now gone into great things. So I think it's kind of the same thing. Like I think sometimes they try and figure out who the better prospect is. Here's another example: Jillian Robertson and Macy Barber last year, right? Like that, they just put those two together to be like, who's the better prospect? And obviously, Macy won in the first round, and Macy ended up losing after that. But you get what I'm saying? Like they try and figure out, I think, who the better prospect is, type thing, and then they sort of move them along, in their career.
Mm-hmm. And you got also like Kay Hansen versus Corey McKenna. That's another one.
That's right, which is such a weird, like, I like, especially with Hansen coming off a win, you'd think they'd give her like a veteran, but I guess, yeah, they're trying to see who's got the higher upside, so to speak. But McKenna's 21? That was a good win, by the way. She defeated Demopoulos, who's an LFA champ. That was pretty solid.
Yeah, I think Kay Hansen's the same age as well. I think they're both 21. Going back to the bantamweight division for a sec, do you think that O'Malley, where people's calling him a hype train, do you think that's the case, or do you think?
Nah, this was the right matchmaking here. Look, Chito Vera, tough guy. He wasn't ranked. He should have been, though. I thought he won the fight before that against Song Yadong. Vera had never been finished in his career. I think the only thing you could say about O'Malley being overhyped are his fans, because I saw people saying that O'Malley was going to finish Vera in the first round. It's like, have you watched a Tito Vera fight? This guy's never been finished in his career. O'Malley's not going to, like, he could have maybe, but I just didn't see that. Like, you can't confidently say that O'Malley was going to go out there and knock out Vera. That just wasn't going to happen. And look, obviously there was an injury in the fight. I think Vera played a part in that. This idea that he got lucky is stupid. Vera won that fight. I mean, it's not like O'Malley got injured walking to the cage. Vera did something in that fight, and that caused the injury. But was Malley overhyped? No, I think it's just this is what happens. It's like Edmund Shabazi and people saying the same thing, that, oh, you're so overhyped. No, he wasn't. He knocked out Brad Tavares last year at UFC 244, and Brunson's always been sort of a gatekeeper. This was the right move for him. He lost. No big deal. He's 22. He'll bounce back. He learned from this. That's how it works. Like, not every prospect can be overhyped. Like, I just don't buy into that. Like Sage Northcutt, sure, fair enough. I mean, or Johnny Walker's a better example, right? Like, people are like, Walker's the guy to beat John Jones. Well, Walker was fighting Justin Ledet and Misha Serkinov and all these other guys that aren't like top guys. And then when he fights someone good like Corey Anderson, he gets knocked out. So that's overhyped. But like O'Malley, Shabazian, all these other, even Macy Barber, those aren't overhyped. You got to look at the wins. You got to look at the way their careers progressing. They weren't overhyped. None of those are, in my opinion.
And when you talk about recency bias, this is, I know it doesn't apply really to the fight that's just happened, but Sean O'Malley was doing well in that fight. It's not like that he got dominated. It's a bit different to the Shabazian and Brunson fight, but I think O'Malley was probably winning. He was using his kicks really well. And he did stun the left hand or right hand, I think it was, even when he was a bit wobbly. But this injury's occurred to him before against Andrei Sokomatar, didn't it? So whether it's do you know if it's on the exact same foot or whatever it was he's done? I
don't. And there's all these theories too that I've seen people say about how, like, is it because he cuts too much weight? Are his bones more frail? Like I brought up the Corey Hill example, if you remember him years ago. He's like a huge, I think it was lightweight. And by the way, rest in peace, Corey, because he left us a few years ago. But Corey was like a huge fighter, and then he broke his leg in the fight, and people felt it was because of the fact that he was cutting too much weight. I don't know if that's the case. I'm not a doctor. O'Malley is a pretty big bantamweight, but yeah, it's I believe it was the same leg, but it could just be maybe the way he's training, maybe he's favoring that leg too much. I don't know. I don't have the answers. We need to get someone with a lab coat on that could answer that for us. But yeah, it's something that I'm sure it's something to make note of. But people acting like that's the reason, as if they have some sort of medical degree, is hilarious to me.
Yeah, and also I just think he's got. I don't think ever he did, but he's got kind of like a Taekwondo base, doesn't he? In terms of like he's constantly bouncing. Whether that could be a thing where his foot could just be misplaced. Like, it doesn't have to be scientific. It could just be something like that, because he always bounces on it, doesn't he? So like, I think he'll definitely come back. I don't think when he does come back, he should fight someone too low down the rankings. I think Thomas Almeida or Alejandro Perez would be a great fight for him. I think that's maybe a fight they could have done.
Well, doesn't that kind of go back against our thing, though? Like, you want to build Almeida back up, right? Because he's still relatively young. Like, I think he should fight, like, kind of what he was fighting before, like an Eddie Wineland type, maybe when he gets back. Like, I saw people suggest the Simone and Kelleher winner. I don't even know. Like, it's like, do you want to risk? Like, Simone's had some good wins. Kelleher's had some good wins. I mean, Kelleher knocked out Hunter Azure, who's never been finished. So it's like, do you want to go that route? I don't know. I think play it safe with O'Malley. He's got a huge fan base. Like, you don't want to screw this thing up. You don't want to have him losing 2 fights in a row. Like, I think I would favor him in all those names I just mentioned, but still, like, why risk it? Just give him one easy fight, and then you can give him those fights after that. Like, give him like I don't know, just someone like a Frankie Saenz. That would make sense, in my opinion, even though I think Frankie should probably hang him up.
Yeah. There's someone who's quite really underrated, who's just not really getting fights much, whether it's due to COVID-19 or not. But Raoni Barcelos, he's someone that I know he's meant to face Damon, wasn't he, in March?
Yeah.
But he's someone that just never gets mentioned at all. Like, in the conversation, he's literally like just outside the top 15. Whether it's because no one wants to fight him, I'm not too sure. But
he's in kind of a weird spot too. You're right. It was supposed to fight Saman, and then obviously the event was canceled. They never rebooked him, and he's in Brazil. The problem with Barcelos is, and I agree with you, he looks amazing. And you just look at the wins he's had. Even that last one over Sad Nurmagomedov. I mean, that was a quality win. Nurmagomedov was 13-1 at the time. Mm-hmm. He's 35, right? Like, I think people forget about that. So it's not like, it's kind of like Leo Santos at lightweight. It's like good record, but like, is the UFC going to really take time to invest in this? If Barcelos is 20 or 25 or something, guarantee you he's getting more fights booked. But 35-year-old guy, do they really want to put him in there when they know they're maybe going to get 5 more years out of him? I don't know. It's tough. So I'm with you. Super talented guy, but I think the age is the reason they're not in a rush to bring him back.
Talking about like people that probably shouldn't be, like, in terms of like their age, Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall's being made. What do you think of that?
I think it's kind of a fun style matchup. Hall's really turned a corner. I think him being at Fortis MMA has really paid dividends for his career. He's looked a lot better. Anderson Silva, I don't really know what to expect at this point. Like, he's not getting brutally knocked out, but he's not like lighting the world on fire like he used to as well. I think it's one of those like kind of fun matchups from a style perspective. I mean, didn't they call Uriah Hall the next Anderson Silva on The Ultimate Fighter, and that basically like plagued his career? But as far as like being consistent. But yeah, like it's a fun matchup, but I just don't know what type of Anderson Silva we're going to get. And conversely, like with Uriah, I mean, he has found consistency now, but it seems like it anyways. But I mean, he's a hit or miss guy too. I mean, there's been a couple Uriah Hall fights where it's like, what Uriah Hall is this? He hasn't, it's just not really being aggressive. So we'll see. We'll see sort of how that plays out. I mean, I got to pick Hall here just with the youth and, being a bit younger and obviously, being a lot more active too. So yeah, should be a fun fight, but you never know with Uriah Hall, right?
Mm-hmm. And he's had a lot of bad luck recently as well, hasn't he, with fights being cancelled. He's also meant to fight Yoel Romero. So I think that's good he stayed in camp, and I think that's what will give him a win, because we don't know how much Anderson Silva's been training yet. So also we have Carlos Condit returning as well. What do you think of that?
Interesting. Court McGee, right? That's who he's fighting. I don't know. I don't know what happened to Carlos Condit. I don't know if it's because he's been in so many wars or what the deal is, but like, it's just a weird turn of events in his career, right? Like, here was a guy that I thought did enough to beat, it was either Hendricks or Lawler. I think it was a Lawler fight. I forget. It was one of those fights where it's like, that was super like razor close or whatever. But yeah, like, I don't know. Like, I don't even, like, can you even trust Carlos Condit to win a fight at this point in his career? It's really tough to say. McGee's a guy that's never going to make it easy. Like, he's not getting, demolished in his fights. Like, he's fighting tough guys like Sean Brady, who he lost to, not that long ago. Sean Brady, I think, is like the future of that division. Not a bad loss to have. So I don't know. It's really a case of who has more left in their career. But if this fight was like even like 2 years ago, of course Condit would be favored and you'd feel confident in him winning. But now I don't know. I think McGee could pull it off. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. And McGee's been more active, hasn't he? So in recent times anyway. And Sean Brady, like we said, he's the future of the division, so it's not really a bad loss. Last thing, what do you think? What fights are you most looking forward to coming up in the next couple of months?
Oh, the easy ones. Izzy and Costa for sure. Habib and Gaethje, that's at the top of the list, 100%. Like, just to see how Gaethje deals with Habib's grappling, and can he get taken down, and does Gaethje use his wrestling? Like, there's so many like intriguing things about that fight that I just can't wait. That's one as well. And then let me just have a quick look here because I do have the fights listed somewhere in an email here. But yeah, like I think like even like something like Thiago Santos and Glover Teixeira, like I'm interested to see, has the layoff, like how's that going to play with Thiago Santos in his career? And Glover, like clearly he's still can compete at a high level. Like what he did to Anthony Smith was super impressive. So like even a fight like that, I'm super interested in to see, you know, what Glover can do, how far he can go at his age. So yeah, a lot of really good fights in the docket. Really looking forward to it. And also got to mention Sandhagen and Moraes. Super interesting fight. Corey is one of the smartest fighters in that division. Can he take a Marlon Moraes punch? And conversely, can he get him to the ground? Can he try out that ground game on a Marlon Moraes? We'll see. So a lot of good fights on deck. Kudos to the UFC.
Yeah, it's really exciting times for the UFC as well. Thank you for coming on. Is there anything you want to plug before you go?
Well, I work for like, you know me, I work for like 10 outlets, 2 promotions. I do a lot of stuff. I got that show with Chris Cyborg every week too. Yeah, easiest thing to do, follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. You know me, I'm very easy to get a hold of, very easy to respond to. So if you have any questions or whatever, or anything at all, don't hesitate to reach out. My DMs are always open on both those platforms. And my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. I put all my interviews and playlists on there. They might not be uploaded there, but they're on the playlist. So I put them on there. I do a preview show every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. I do a Q&A every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And I got those pros picks videos, which everyone loves. So yeah, check it out. And thanks for having me on, man. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, no worries. Speak soon.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, man. Have a great day.
You
or
too.
Evening in your case. See ya.
See ya.